This is hands down the most mind-blowing dark fantasy masterpiece of the year. A man simply happens to pick up a suit of armor by accident, only to trigger a relentless hunt by a never-ending horde of demons and ghosts. To escape these monsters, the couple is forced to engage in a non-stop slaughter day and night. The story begins with a phone belonging to a man named Aurelien. To dodge some persistent drama, he has kept his device on airplane mode for 3 whole days. But just as he is about to check those unread messages, he accidentally drops the phone into a dried-up well on his property. To get his phone back, he secures himself with a safety rope and ventures down into the dark well alone. Upon reaching the bottom, he realizes this isn't just some simple dry well, but more like a dilapidated cellar that hasn't been maintained for years. He even discovers various mysterious iron plates scattered across the ground. Not only are they carved with hideous beast heads, but every single piece has a completely different shape. These oddly shaped iron fragments were buried separately in different corners of the cellar. Thinking he has stumbled upon some rare, ancient artifacts, he packs up all the pieces and brings them back to the surface. To get a better look at the details, he carefully washes away the layers of grime and mud. Once he finishes organizing them, he realizes there are hundreds of these iron shards, and they carry a faint, putrid stench of decay. Looking at these bizarrely shaped fragments, Aurelien suddenly notices that their contours seem to perfectly fit every part of his body. They even seem to have a magnetic pull, actively trying to stick to his skin. Driven by curiosity, he tries to arrange the iron plates on his body according to their shapes. Before he can even finish the puzzle, the fragments seem to wake up with a mind of their own and begin snapping onto him. Aurelien falls back into the dry well once again. This time, as the iron plates form a complete set of armor, a strange, deep voice suddenly echoes inside his mind. Immediately after, a wave of intense dizziness washes over him. The cells in his body begin to surge violently and start to mutate. The direction of this mutation is actually rooted in all his past decadent and wasted lifestyle habits. Once the cellular mutation is complete, Aurelien can no longer stay conscious and sinks into a heavy, dizzy slumber. When he wakes up the next day, he frantically calls out to his wife, Nanako, who is outside the house. But because he is encased in the armor, he has no way of climbing out of the well on his own. With no other choice, Nanako has to use their car, attaching a rope to her husband to try and pull him out by force. Even with the raw horsepower of the car, Aurelien is barely dragged out of the well due to the staggering weight of the armor. Looking at the cool yet eerie armor on her husband, Nanako guesses it might be a relic from the Middle Ages. The various totems on the armor each seem to symbolize a warrior's honor and loyalty. However, the rotting stench coming off the metal is so pungent that she tells Aurelien to find a way to take it off immediately. No matter how much strength Aurelien uses or how much he struggles, the armor feels like it's grown into his body and won't budge an inch. Helpless, Aurelien turns to his wife for help. Before he can even explain the full extent of his predicament, his father suddenly gives him a call. It turns out that Aurelien kept a secret from everyone, taking his heavily pregnant wife all the way to her hometown in Japan. His plan was not only to focus on accompanying his wife through her pregnancy, but also to completely dodge those nagging friends who wouldn't leave him alone. But during the call, the moment he mentions his father, the cells inside him surge again and instantly manifest into the image of his father. Unaware of what's happening, Aurelien only feels the armor getting heavier and heavier. He assumes these iron plates might be made of powerful magnets, which is why they are clinging so tightly to him. To help her husband out of this mess, Nanako tries every trick in the book and every method she can think of. But no matter how hard they try, the armor remains completely motionless. In a moment of desperation, they even give up the idea of it being a valuable antique and decide to use brute force to tear it off. Even though Nanako puts all her strength into it, she can't leave a single scratch on the armor. After several failed attempts, Nanako has no choice but to give up in frustration. Since they can't remove the armor for now, Aurelien suppresses the growing unease in his heart and accompanies his wife to the hospital for a checkup. But while the doctor is using the machine to scan Nanako's belly, a chilling sight appears in Aurelien's vision. He sees the baby inside the womb, bearing sharp fangs and constantly making provocative gestures at him. However, his wife and the doctor beside him see nothing unusual, smiling as they tell him the baby is developing perfectly and is very healthy. The moment Nanako finishes her checkup and leaves, Aurelien can't hold back anymore and grabs the hospital's scanning equipment to repeatedly scan his armor. But no matter how he tries, the machine shows no reaction and can't detect a single thing about the armor's nature. When night falls, a flat-out exhausted Aurelian is fast asleep when he is suddenly jolted awake by an ice-cold, monstrous hand. He instantly sits up in an alert state, dimly seeing a strange figure standing outside the door. He wakes his wife up right away, wanting her to go downstairs with him to investigate. Just then, a low, raspy voice calls out to them. Following the sound, they see that there is indeed a silhouette standing outside the door. They muster up their courage and slowly approach the door. But the moment they hit the light switch, they freeze in their tracks. A creature that looks exactly like an alien is staring at them with pure malice, mockingly calling Aurelian a coward who hides behind a woman. Seeing a slimy, viscous mudman appear out of thin air behind them, they are scared out of their wits and bolt out the door immediately. In their panic, they jump into the car to escape the area, but before they can drive very far, that mudman appears in front of the car again, blocking their path. The mudman begins to shake the car violently, and just as it's about to smash the vehicle, Aurelian loses his cool entirely, abandons his wife, and sprints into the distance. But the mudman only seems to have eyes for the armored Aurelian, ignoring Nanako in the car and tackling him to the ground to launch a frenzied attack. Once the mudman restricts Aurelian's movement, its hands lock tightly around his throat. Just as he is about to be unalived by suffocation, Nanako arrives just in time. But the monster is covered in thick slime, and the moment Nanako's weapon touches it, it gets stuck, making it impossible to apply any force. Realizing they are no match for the monster, they have no choice but to run again. But the armor on Aurelian is incredibly heavy, preventing him from moving quickly, and he is tackled by the mudman again after only a few steps. Not far away, the alien is standing still, constantly barking out eerie commands to direct the mudman's assault on Aurelian. Aurelian fights back desperately, but in the chaos, his foot gets stuck in the monster's slime. Luckily, Nanako rushes in and, with a swift strike of her blade, finally manages to successfully take out the mudman. As a shell-shocked Nanako looks at the mudman's corpse on the ground, she discovers that its face looks exactly like Aurelian's father. To uncover the secret of the demon armor and save her husband from this nightmare, Nanako decides on the spot to take Aurelian to find a reclusive sorcerer, hoping to find a way to break the curse. But as they walk through the busy streets, the various beautiful women on the roadside posters cause the cells in Aurelian's body to surge wildly again, and Aurelian is completely oblivious to this. In fact, whenever he sees anything on the road, his mutated cells automatically replicate it. All these replicated symptoms will eventually manifest as demons and ghosts, launching fatal attacks on him one by one. It isn't until they find the highly respected sorcerer that they finally understand the true origin of this armor. It turns out that this armor originally belonged to a samurai from Japan's Edo period, and those hideous beast totems on the armor are the exclusive marks of that samurai's family. That samurai could have had a peaceful and happy life, but a brutal war caused him to lose one of his eyes. It was this very tragedy that completely warped his personality, making him extremely paranoid and suspicious, always feeling like everyone around him hated and rejected him. Suffering from mental torment, the samurai often wandered alone in the woods, until one day he accidentally encountered a bizarre face tree, and the bark suddenly erupted with a blinding golden light. This light allowed him to see the legendary Izanami and Izanagi, and he was granted a complete set of armor. He believed that with this armor, he could regain his dignity and protect everything he held dear. However, he never expected that from the very day he put on the armor, bizarre chaos would erupt in his home every night. Countless demons and ghosts would manifest out of thin air and begin to wreak havoc. As time went by, even more monsters appeared, and their destructive power grew increasingly stronger. His wife lived in constant fear all day long and eventually chose to leave him after being unable to bear the burden any longer. The samurai, plagued day and night by these spirits, gradually became exhausted from the endless torment. Ultimately, he was cruelly torn apart by a horde of monsters and thrown into that abandoned dry well. With that, Aurelian is kicked out by the old man. But by now, Nanako already knows in her heart that this demon armor has long been under a lethal curse. From now on, monsters will come knocking on their door to attack them every single night. Therefore, they must prepare all their weapons before night falls to fully deal with the sudden crises that are about to come. As the sky grows darker and darker, Aurelian is unwilling to let his heavily pregnant wife fall into danger and insists on facing it all alone. However, Nanako firmly objects and refuses to let her husband face the peril by himself under any circumstances. Fortunately, Nanako used to be a Taekwondo champion, so even though she is currently pregnant, she can still handle various emergencies with ease. Her only hope now is that Aurelian can take care of himself. When the night completely envelops them, the monsters arrive exactly as scheduled. Seeing this, Aurelian immediately throws all the weapons in his hands at them, but these attacks have no effect at all and are easily bounced off by the monsters. In the chaos, when Aurelian accidentally leaves himself exposed, a monster from behind instantly lunges at him and pins him down on the spot. The monster right in front of him is actually a cigarette and alcohol creature, replicated from his own cells, originating from his past decadent life. Just as Aurelian's life is hanging by a thread, Nanako steps in just in time to stop it, allowing Aurelian to escape the danger. Luckily, they have been doing daily physical training during this time, so it doesn't take long for them to successfully eliminate this first monster. But to their surprise, the blood spraying from the monster has an intense hallucinogenic effect, so they quickly cover their noses and mouths. When Nanako prepares to open the door for ventilation, the monster that was just taken out stands back up again. Right before Aurelian's shocked eyes, it even grows another pair of arms, instantly doubling its combat power. Nanako reacts with lightning speed, delivering a fierce flying kick that sends the monster straight into the dry well, barely resolving the first crisis. Before they can even catch their breath and rest, a monster covered in strobe lights suddenly appears in the room. The blinding strobe lights keep flashing, making it impossible for Aurelian to open his eyes. He has no power to fight back at all and can only let the monster attack him at will. In the moment of crisis, Nanako quickly discovers the monster's weakness and immediately signals Aurelian to prepare an attack using water. But after the monster senses their intentions, it immediately emits a deafening audio frequency. The piercing sound makes their eardrums hurt instantly, leaving them scurrying around in a pathetic state. Under this powerful audio attack, the monster runs wild in the room without any restraint and soon approaches Aurelian, kicking him into the bathroom. Seeing her husband being brutally savaged by the monster, Nanako endures the pain in her eardrums and cleverly turns on the water valve in the bathroom. Then, taking advantage of the moment when the monster is focused on attacking Aurelian, she executes a neat, spinning kick to interrupt the monster's movement and knocks it into the bathtub. As the monster short-circuits upon contact with water, that piercing audio frequency slowly fades away. The monster's body is then washed down the drain along with the flow of water. However, the crisis is far from over at this moment. Just after they deal with the strobe light monster, an incredibly seductive figure quietly appears behind the bathroom door. Immediately after, the radio in the room is mysteriously turned on. Accompanied by eerie music, that figure begins to dance in front of them with a twisted and bizarre posture. The hot physique and strange dance moves cause Aurelian to fall into a state of obsession instantly, completely forgetting his own danger. In the next second, the vibe suddenly shifts dramatically. Before they can figure out the monster's intention, it transforms into an incredibly eerie and terrifying form and slowly moves closer to Aurelian. After a life and death struggle, Aurelian and Nanako finally manage to resolve all the crises and fall into a deep sleep with their exhausted bodies. The next morning, Nanako is the first to wake up. Thinking back to the monster that was kicked into the dry well last night, they hurry over to check on it. They discover that those monsters have long since disappeared, leaving only an empty dry well behind. But knowing that monsters will still attack every night, they make up their minds to force open this demon armor, no matter what the cost. However, they try every possible method, whether it's brute force disassembly or using tools, but they cannot leave a single mark on the armor. Since they can't open the armor, Nanako thinks about finding out the attributes of the monsters first. She begins to frantically search through a large number of ancient books and materials. She discovers that the seductive monster from last night is actually carved onto the beast head totem of the armor. But besides that, the forms of the other monsters are not recorded in any of the literature or documents. With no other choice, they have to temporarily put aside the idea of cracking the armor and continue their daily routine of being on guard by day and fighting by night. They gradually notice a pattern. As long as Aurelian sees anything in life that makes him feel restless, his mutated cells will automatically replicate it. When night comes, these replicated things will transform into various eerie monsters and appear in the house to attack them. After figuring out this pattern, Nanako shows up in time every time to instantly take out the monsters. She even takes photos to keep as records before the monsters disappear, to make it easier for subsequent analysis. Once they compile and analyze all the photos and information of the eliminated monsters, they find that these creatures are all related to Aurelian to varying degrees. They either originate from his past experiences or stem from his emotional fluctuations. They immediately begin a systematic analysis, keeping information and recording characteristics every time they encounter and eliminate a new monster at night. As for that alien creature that always appears to command the monsters, they have searched through all the records, but cannot find any mention of it, as if it doesn't belong to this world at all. Even stranger is that in the day-after-day slaughter, some monsters turn out to have absolutely nothing to do with Aurelian, which makes them even more confused. Although they still haven't found any clues to break the armor, their ability to deal with the monsters becomes more and more proficient, and their cooperation grows more seamless. During the day, they seize every moment to strengthen their training, polish their fighting skills, and improve their physical fitness. At night, they go all out and handle these various monsters with ease. They can even set traps in advance once they can predict the time the monsters will appear, making it easy to subdue them. Not only have they mastered the specific times the monsters show up, but they have also gradually become accustomed to this life of training by day and fighting by night. However, this long-term combat and state of alert are also constantly wearing down their patience. The entire room is covered in signs of damage, making it difficult to maintain even a basic living environment. Finally, one day, Nanako can no longer stand this kind of life, and she especially can't stand Aurelian's indifferent attitude. She angrily accuses Aurelian, reminding him that they specifically came to her hometown to escape the frustrations of the past and peacefully accompany her through her pregnancy. But she didn't expect life here to be even more chaotic than before. With the baby about to be born, they haven't even made the most basic preparations for the delivery and have to spend day and night repairing the house damaged by monsters. This hopeless life causes her to completely break down, and she slams the door and leaves the room in a rage. Facing his wife's anger and a pile of troublesome matters, Aurelian is also at a loss and can only choose to drown his sorrows in alcohol to numb himself. But while he is feeling depressed, Nanako's blood-curdling scream suddenly comes from the bathroom. It turns out that Nanako is about to go into labor, but Aurelian, who has no experience at all, is completely helpless in this situation. Seeing Nanako's belly fluctuating wildly, she gives birth to an unusually hideous baby in no time. Watching his wife undergo a mutation, Aurelian knows this must be the work of the monsters again, and immediately hands the baby back. But in the next second, the hideous baby instantly turns into a human bomb, and together with Nanako, they are blown into ashes. One disaster after another pushes Aurelian into total despair. But just then, a low, calling voice suddenly comes from a large tree deep in the garden. The voice is eerie and extremely tempting, claiming that as long as Aurelian speaks out his dissatisfaction with his friends and family, it can help him take off the armor. When Aurelian actually recounts all his past experiences, the entire tree seems to wake up instantly, and countless vines wrap directly around him. Aurelian feels a surge of joy, thinking the armor is finally about to be taken away. But what follows is a wave of dizziness. Once the vines completely envelop him, dozens of fruits gradually grow on the branches. As these fruits grow rapidly, they all eventually turn into Aurelian's appearance. In a trance, Aurelian sees that alien-like monster pluck those fruits from the branches and eat them, one by one, right in front of him. As the last fruit is swallowed, the alien creature also gradually transforms into his image. When Aurelian wakes up again, he learns from his wife, who has hurried over, that he has been in a coma for 10 whole days. And that monster that turned into him has already used the time while he was unconscious to escape to his hometown in France. It has kidnapped all the friends and family he mentioned. Filled with regret, Aurelian doesn't hesitate for a second and immediately takes Nanako to rush back to France. The moment he pushes open the door to his old home, the monster directly invades his consciousness. Immediately after, his past memories appear before him. In this dreamscape that feels all too real, everything here represents the self he is most unwilling to face in the depths of his heart. It is the manifestation of fame, obsession, and the resentment of the demon armor. At this moment, he sees his life flashing before his eyes like a lantern show, and he also sees the version of himself consumed by obsession. It constantly tempts Aurelian, telling him that as long as he abandons them and regains his top-tier glory, he can possess the full power of the demon armor. He is told he can control everything and will never be restricted by these monsters again. Meanwhile, in the real world, not only has his wife already been captured, but even all his relatives and siblings related to him are facing abandonment. This is a fierce collision between Aurelian's obsession and his conscience, a direct showdown between desire and love. Under his wife's constant calling, he endures the attacks from his dark side while holding on to his love for his family. Seeing his wife's weak appearance and the baby's innocent crying in the dream, and remembering his wife's sacrifices and reminders, his conscience and love gradually awaken. Once those mutated cells return to normal, the monsters he faces also transform into their most innocent and romantic forms. At this moment, Aurelian finally wakes up from his subconscious. Looking at the family he is about to protect, he decides to face the fear in his heart alone. The moment Aurelian confronts the darkness within himself, the armor on his body gradually begins to loosen. After they leave this illusion, they also successfully return to their real lives. As the armor shatters into pieces, the movie comes to an end. In truth, that demon armor which runs through the entire film is never a naturally evil object, but is instead that samurai's armor of glory. It carried loyalty and military achievements, but because of a massive injustice and extreme obsession, it was stained into a soul-devouring curse. The appearance of those demons and ghosts was merely the negative emotions derived from obsession, a concrete manifestation of inner darkness. Therefore, true strength is not about getting rid of all desires, but learning to control your own heart. As long as you find your own peace and redemption in an ordinary life, you can obtain the armor that truly belongs to you. All right, that's all for today. See you in the next episode.